In the year 466, the young Empress Dowager Feng of Northern Wei, only 24 years old, quietly and strategically arranged for loyal and trustworthy members of the imperial clan to lead troops into the palace. With overwhelming force, they swiftly crushed the treasonous plot of Prime Minister Yihan and his faction. From her position of authority in the Grand Hall of the palace, she immediately issued orders for the execution of the rebels. At the same time, citing the emperor's youth and aiming to prevent the recurrence of power usurpation by ministers, she declared her decision to act as regent and temporarily take charge of state affairs. This bold move broke the rule established by Northern Wei's founding emperor, Dowager, which forbade women from participating in state affairs. However, Empress Dowager Feng's display of leadership and courage in suppressing Yihan's rebellion won the full support of the court officials, who raised no objections. Empress Dowager Feng was intelligent and eager to learn from a young age. Although she initially entered the palace as a maid, she was fortunate to be raised and educated by her aunt, Princess Feng, who taught her proper etiquette, literature, and the arts. After being chosen by Emperor Wenqing, Dowager, to be his consort, the two studied and wrote together, often discussing Confucian classics and historical texts. Having grown up in the palace and spent many years close to her husband, the emperor, who was of a similar age, Empress Dowager Feng became deeply familiar with palace affairs, court governance, and the matters discussed among officials. Emperor Xianwen, Dowager, was naturally intelligent, perceptive, and kind-hearted. Due to the Northern Wei founding Emperor Dowager's decree of the mother of the crown prince must die, Dowager's birth mother, Consort Li, was put to death after he was named crown prince. From the age of 3, Dowager was raised by Empress Feng, who treated him as her own son. She poured her love into him, was devoted to his education, and instilled in him Confucian values and Han culture. The two relied deeply on each other, sharing a bond no different from that of a true mother and son. With the guidance and support of Empress Dowager Feng, the 13-year-old Dowager transformed from a weak and helpless young emperor, who, when faced with the ruthless former Prime Minister Yihan, could do nothing but hide and weep in Empress Dowager Feng's presence, into a strong and wise ruler. He gradually regained his resolve and became determined to govern the country well. Under his and Empress Dowager Feng's leadership, the once turbulent political situation of Northern Wei was swiftly brought under control. Emperor Xianwen, Dowager, carried out the policies of Northern Wei's founding emperor, Dowager. He initiated the construction of numerous houses in the capital, Pingqing, and other areas, relocating the Xianbei people and other nomadic tribes, who had previously lived beyond the Great Wall, into the Central Plains. The goal was to lead his people away from their primitive, scattered tribal and nomadic lifestyle, and guide them toward adopting the more advanced, feudal agrarian culture of the Han Chinese. At the same time, the Central Plains region, which had long suffered from war and destruction and had seen a massive decline in population, needed an influx of new settlers to restore its productivity and economic vitality. However, this long-term plan to strengthen the nation and enrich the people faced significant resistance. Many commoners were deeply attached to their ancestral lands and unwilling to relocate. In implementing the policy, some local officials resorted to harsh and coercive measures, which led to public resentment. Taking advantage of the unrest, rogues and troublemakers stirred up emotions among the people. Many young men fled and gathered outside the cities, and numerous counties and commanderies began to experience organized banditry and robbery, creating a highly serious situation. The compassionate Emperor Xianwen did not wish to use force to suppress those who resisted the resettlement policy, particularly the young men who had fled. Instead, he sought to calm the situation through a general amnesty. However, when he consulted his ministers for their opinions, one of them strongly objected, saying, "The people have fled and turned to banditry. This is a serious crime. If we pardon them without holding them accountable, it would be a case of those in power blaming themselves for the wrongs of the people, which is a reversal of proper order and not how policy should be enforced. In my view, it would be better to execute the ringleaders and pardon the rest. Such an action would be sufficient to restore order across the realm." But Emperor Xianwen remembered the wise words of Cui Hong, a renowned minister from Qinghe who had served the founding emperor of Northern Wei, Dowager. Cui Hong once said, "A wise ruler leads the people with the aim of achieving peace and unity, not by engaging in a contest of strength with them." While granting amnesty may not be the ideal method, it is practical and effective. To first punish and then pardon is less effective than simply granting a full amnesty from the start. If anyone continues to cause trouble after being pardoned, it won't be too late to punish them then. Emperor Xianwen, Tuoba Hong, deeply agreed with this perspective and carried out the policy accordingly. As expected, the people ceased their unrest. For the small number who continued to stir up trouble and engage in sabotage, Tuoba Hong dispatched General Yulu with 10,000 troops to suppress the disturbances, swiftly eliminating the remaining threats to stability. In the year 467, Consort Li, the wife of Emperor Xianwen, gave birth to a son, Tuoba Hong. Empress Dowager Feng was overjoyed at the arrival of her eldest grandson and felt greatly content. Not long after, she decided to step back from her role as regent and cease involvement in state affairs, allowing Emperor Xianwen to govern in his own right. She then devoted herself fully to the responsibility of raising Tuoba Hong. After Emperor Wenqing's death, Empress Dowager Feng, still young and beautiful in widowhood, grew fond of Li Yi, a handsome and talented young man from an official family, and frequently had him attend to her in the palace. Emperor Xianwen, Tuoba Hong, naturally sharp-minded and deeply influenced from a young age by Empress Dowager Feng's teachings in Han Confucian morals, strongly disapproved of this relationship. Rumors and whispers among the public were also common. As a result, a subtle rift began to form between the emperor and the Empress Dowager. In 470, Li Yi's elder brother, Li Fu, a close friend of the Minister of Works Li Fu, and a relative, Li Xian, the prefect of Xiangzhou, was reported for crimes. In an attempt to protect himself, Li Xian confessed to 2 or 3 dozen hidden crimes committed by Li Fu. Seizing the opportunity, Emperor Xianwen issued an order to imprison Li Fu and his brothers in a death cell. That winter, Li Yi, Li Fu, and their cousin Li Xianda were all executed, after Li Yi's death. Empress Dowager Feng was deeply saddened and fell into a state of melancholy. Later, Emperor Xianwen promoted Li Xian, the one who had reported the crimes of Li Yi and Li Fu, to the position of Minister of Works, allowing him to participate in state affairs. This action made it even more difficult for Empress Dowager Feng to tolerate the situation. As a result, the once close and motherly relationship between Empress Dowager Feng and Emperor Xianwen, who had been like a true mother and son, became strained, and their relationship turned as hostile as fire and water. This situation led Emperor Xianwen, who had always been overly dependent on Empress Dowager Feng for emotional support since childhood, to become disheartened about life. He often engaged in deep, philosophical discussions with court officials and monks, expressing a sense of weariness toward governance and indifference to state affairs. In 471, Emperor Xianwen considered passing the throne to his esteemed uncle, Tuoba Zitu, who had gained significant reputation. However, this proposal was met with united opposition from the imperial clan ministers and eunuchs. Left with no choice, in August, he abdicated in favor of his son, the 5-year-old crown prince Tuoba Hong, who then ascended the throne as Emperor Xiaowen. At the age of 17, Emperor Xianwen became the retired emperor, or Taisheng Huang.